Well, I dare say a few phone-ins today have been filled with this particular topic, but I make no apology for going back to it or presenting it to you for the first time today, if you've not been listening to the radio. How easy is it to reason with a toddler who wants to let go of mummy's hand and run off towards the danger of a busy road, or maybe daddy's hand? It's one of the arguments that's been advanced in recent years by parents fearful that what their parents and grandparents took for granted was about to be criminalised. It's an argument that no longer cuts any ice. In Wales, from today, any type of corporal punishment, that includes slapping and smacking, it will become illegal. The defence hitherto of reasonable punishment, some call it reasonable chastisement, will be gone. Joining me here in the studio, Ella Whelan, and the broadcaster and journalist Sam Dowler, to put a different perspective on this one. Sam, thanks for taking up the opportunity to present the case for Scotland and now Wales. So the United Kingdom is divided on this. How did we get here?
Well, I mean, they might be divided, but not by that much. The NSPCC did a survey of 3,000 people in England and found that 64% said that the law should change over here, and 68% said that it was unacceptable to hit a child. I mean, I can't imagine anybody being for beating a child. I mean,
no, Sam, the language is really important here, isn't it? Nobody for a second is defending, in quotes, beating a child. I think what they're saying, and I don't want to steal some of Ella's best lines, but is the example I cite in my introduction there, a mum or a dad walking alongside the road, toddler, who you can't reason with, by the way, I know this, makes a dart for the traffic. You're panic-stricken, you love that child, and you, in that moment, that loss of control, but also instinctively wanting to teach them a lesson that might save their life in the future, you slap the back of their calves. That is not... But
I do, of course, think that, that is such a rarefied situation. If your child is in danger of running into the road, I mean, I was hit as a child, and I remember getting a spanking of a lifetime when I tried to run into a bonfire, which I did do for some reason as a toddler, and obviously I got the smacking of a lifetime in situations, whether it's life or death. Fair enough, I think, but obviously. I've seen people in a supermarket. Listen to what I'm saying. I'm saying in a supermarket, for example, when you see a mother or a father admonish their child, whacking them on the legs, that isn't acceptable anymore. Times have changed, and obviously the situation of life or death. I'm sure if that got to the courts, then there might obviously be some leniency.
Ella, where's the line? Where is it acceptable? Because there is a line, isn't there? I mean, Sam's made it clear there is a line. Whether it's a line that will be recognised by a court, I don't know. What do you think?
We should have very clear laws, and we did previously have very clear laws, in England, Scotland and Wales about violence, about harassment, and indeed about child protection. I mean, there's a lot lacking in relation to child protection, and some of the horror stories we've seen of late in relation to children like baby pee and things like that show that there is room for improvement. But let's get this straight. This law is not about preventing serious bodily harm or child abuse. It's about making a judgment call on parents, which I think is both unwarranted and dangerous. The vast majority of times in which a parent will physically interact, if you want to call it that, with their child is out of love. Parents get a real drubbing in this kind of conversation. There's a suggestion that they're walking around waiting for the moment to wallop their kid, and that is absolutely not the case. And who is anyone else to decide in a supermarket, for example, whether or not a child needs to be disciplined? I think that there is, it's in relation to toddlers, you're very right that the way in which they behave doesn't often respond to reason, and a tap or a smack or a fright, which is really what you're trying to say. You're trying to give them a fright to make them understand the seriousness of what they're doing and the consequences of what they're doing is a tried and tested method. I mean, anecdote isn't often useful in relation to this, and we've had surveys quoted and things like that. But anecdotal evidence in this, I think, is important, which is that everyone, at least in my generation and previous generations, will have had parents who have, out of love and protection, given them a smack sometimes, and not just when their life's been in danger, but when they've been a little rip and they need to know not to do that. And I think that there is a sort of a desire to kind of make parenting into this science these days, which is, you have to read the manuals, you have to, apply to the kind of guidance that the government gives you. And in fact, it's not sort of celebrating old wives' tales, but there is a certain amount of knowledge passed on through generations of how to raise children that I think these kind of laws eradicate, and I think these kind of laws damage, because what we're doing is we're saying to parents, don't just be watching your kid, watch over your shoulder at the busybody in the supermarket aisle who's watching you.
And on that point about the danger of there being a sort of culture of denunciation, Sam, is not the point that actually the unforeseen side effect of this, byproduct of this, might be, I mean, you talk about kids being beaten. There's a scene in the supermarket. Surely what some bad parents will do, and there are good parents, there are bad parents, is they'll say, wait till you get home. And that's exactly what will happen. You will drive this underground, because the kind of parent who ritualistically beats their child will just take them home and do it away from any prying eyes.
Well, I mean, I don't really see how that is the same sort of thing. I mean, like this sort of law, I would imagine it's all very well for us to say, oh, it's a nanny state, etc., etc., and it is more to do with habitual hitting of a child, I would say, and for to be reported, bruising, that sort of thing. I mean, my parents, for example, obviously, it was a different age then, and my mum was hit with a wooden spoon, or my dad with a belt. But obviously, then in her generation, I was just hit with hands. But I remember it. I remember it being. I don't remember it being effective as in making me behave myself. I remember it as in, like, why would my loving parent want to hurt me? We use our words now. We use our words to reason and to maybe take toys away, or to take away screen time. That's what they do these days, and that's far more effective. And in the long run, as well as right then at the time.
Ella, I'm not sure. I mean, when I've some of the violence I've seen meted out at home has been between my own children, sort of sibling on sibling, and you try and stop it, but it's quite difficult. So violence, in quotes, violence comes in different forms, doesn't it? Ella, just muse on this one, if you would. When this story's been reported today about Wales criminalising smacking, it's often in the context of the fact that it's joining 60 other countries in the world that have criminalised smacking. And it's presented as this sort of, with this air of historical inevitability, and you don't want to be on the wrong side of history, which I think is a really clever campaigning ploy. But it's a campaigning ploy.
Yes, I mean, it's not insignificant that Wales is following Scotland. Scotland having a government and policies within that government of some of the most draconian and restrictive anti-freedom measures that we've seen for years. The SNP has been to blame for cracking down on free speech, on parental freedom, on people doing all kinds of things that you should be able to do in a free society. And it is important to say that in a free society in which we respect parental authority, you should have the right to discipline your child as you see fit within the remits of normal law. So that's not causing bruising, that's not causing grievous bodily harm or child abuse. It's disciplining your child as you see fit. I think it's one of the most toxic conversations around parenting that's thrown up has been this idea that children should have a greater say over how they're raised and how they're disciplined than parents. And what that has led to is a very big problem with discipline in schools and in other areas of life, and with lots of very unhappy children who don't know who's the boss. I think one of the important things about smacking, but also, the other speaker is right, words, and actually engaging with your child and telling them who's got the authority. Because most parents do the job with words, by the way. It's not like everyone's just suddenly resorting to clipping them around the ear. That's a last resort. But it's to assert the fact and give parents the confidence to be able to say, I am in charge here, and most importantly, you're safe because I'm in charge here. And once you break down that relationship between parents and kids with the intervention of the state, call it nanny state if you like or whatever, but then that actually damages that relationship and that trust between child and parent. And I think that's why this law is so problematic.
Sam Dowler, 15 seconds or 20 seconds left thereabouts. England will follow in Wales's footsteps, you think?
Yeah, I do. As I said, in the NSPCC survey, 68% already think it's not acceptable. 64% want the law to change. I mean, it's not going to go down; it's going to go up. So I do think it will happen here as well.
Sam Dowler and Ella Whelan, who's here in the studio. Thanks both for that one.